What is up, guys? Back at it again with the episode. Oh my gosh, do you guys remember that? Do you guys remember that viral video? I don't remember when it was, but it was like a viral video and it was like, back at it again, Daniel, with the white vans. Anyways, back at it again with another episode, episode 5. Episode 5. Can you believe it? Honestly, I can't. And we should be further along. Let me just say this. We should be further along. I think by now it should have been doubled and it should be episode 10, or I don't know how that works, or however many episodes, because I would want to do it I wanted to do it. Let me say this. I wanted to do it every Monday for an episode to release every Monday. And I may have touched on this and I may have not, that obviously with starting out and getting the hang of things and honestly getting myself together, getting my life together and how I should be doing things and how I should be, oh my gosh, focused and having a good structure when it comes to everything with the business and the podcast and my life as a whole, that it was going to be better for me to do it bi-weekly until the Lord says, okay, you're ready, until he gives me the green light to say, now you can do it weekly. And maybe he wants me to do it weekly. And I'm saying this right now, and I'm like, maybe he wants me to do it weekly, but I truly believe that I want to do things right. And even now, I'm struggling, guys. And I touched a little bit about it in the last episode, or talked a little bit about it in the last episode, because obviously life and just us as humans, we wrestle with the circumstances that we go through, and it's hard and we get distracted, and it's just one of those things that we go through, and sometimes we don't know how to process, the best way. And so I truly believe that in order for me to do the best I can right now in the podcast would be me doing it bi-weekly. So we are here, episode 5. I'm excited for this one. Honestly, I'm excited for every single one. I'm saying that because I'm like, I am excited. And I don't even have the I'm excited voice, but I am excited about this one, because I think this is gonna be one of those topics that might step on some toes. Okay? Buckle up. Get ready. I have tissues here, but it's not because I've been crying or anything. It's just I have allergies, and the weather in Florida, we already know how it is. It's so bipolar. And so I have tissues with me all the time. But I do believe that this is the type of topic that will challenge a lot of us, that will make us sit for a moment and really think and ask the question, is this something that I'm actively practicing in my life? Or is this something that I've truly dissected in every way and thought about it and said, yeah, I have this. I'm strong in this. I'm always walking in this. And so I'm excited, because what I want to do through this podcast is challenge people. The name was something that God gave me 100%. Him giving me the nails name and being able to incorporate it not in just the nails business, but also the nails podcast. I mean, that could only come from him. And I've said this 20 million times and I'll keep saying it, because it's so cool how he did that. But I think, and I said it in the introduction or in the trailer when I was recording to release kind of like the teaser for the podcast, I talked about how the reason why I love the names, the name, the nails, is because I want us to ask the question, or ask ourselves a question, that are we bearing our cross every day? And are we truly remembering the sacrifice and the true meaning and understanding of when Christ took those nails on the cross for us? And that's a challenging thing to think about. That's a hard thing to think about. You have to live with it every day and understand that he did that for you, and you're going to fall short, and you're going to talk a certain way, and you're going to walk a certain way, do things a certain way, act a certain way, whatever it may be, that may not be Christ-like, or that it's once again showing how unworthy you are of that huge sacrifice that he did. And I'm not in any way trying to say like, oh, you're not worthy, and like talking down to us as, as humans. No, but we know, right? We know that we're not worthy of the big sacrifice that he did for us. And it's again asking that question, are we bearing our cross every day? Are we understanding what he did for us? And I'm so glad that he gave me that name. And so, with the topic that we're going to touch on today, is one of those topics that it gets watered down very easily. And not only that, we use the word so loosely that when I was, even myself, I have to include myself in this. And I think I've learned a lot just doing the research and going through the information that I've found. It's I love how one word can mean so many different things. And when you learn that one word has these many definitions, all these definitions, you start to ask questions like, well, am I living in strength? Let's say we talk about love, and love can mean strength, right? And love can mean kindness, and love can mean patience, right? Love can mean all those things. Usually we associate love with, well, love, right? Valentine's Day just passed. We associate the word love with that. We associate the word love with, I talked about it in one of the episodes about how God so loved the world that he gave his only son. But then you think about it, oh, love is strength. So it makes you ask the question, am I being strong in love? And love is patience. Am I being patient with my partner, with my family in love? Right? All these different things. So today, the word that I want to talk about, the topic that I want to talk about, finally getting into it, what I want to talk about is faith. And can I be honest? Reading the things that I've been searching and reading different passages from the Bible, and also reflecting on how I've been lately, which I'll be transparent has not been great in any way. And not that I'm like, I say that I'm not great because I'll get into it. Okay. I'll get into it. And so doing the research and getting into this, it was one of those things that was just like, whoa, do I have faith? Or I do have faith, but what does my faith look like? What does my faith say about me? And so it's, again, I think it's one of these topics, or today how we're going to get into this topic and this word, I think will really it'll challenge us, and I want us to grow together. Like I said, that is my goal in this, is to challenge you, for us to grow together, for us to become more Christ-like, and to live a life that's worthy of him, to glorify him. We should lead a life that people look at us and they immediately see him. When you see me, you see him. And in order for that to happen, we have to face hard questions. We have to put ourselves in a corner, or sit down and be honest with ourselves, and say, am I doing this? Am I not? And if I'm not, why? And ask those hard questions. We're not going to grow if we just stay the same, if we just continue to believe that there's only one thing for this, there's one thing for that, there's one surface level of everything, when there's so much more. And so anyways, I want to get into faith. And I wanted to kind of touch on how I feel, like if someone were to ask me, well, what does faith mean to you? And the first thing that I thought about was believing in God, right? I have faith in God. I believe in him. I do. I believe that he is a creator of this world. He is Jesus and the Holy Spirit all combined. I believe in God. And then I also thought about, it makes me think about the verse in Matthew 17, 20 when it talks about the mustard seed faith. And that one is in 17:20. Again, Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. I'm reading it in ESV. And it says, he said to them, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. And that right there, I think it's like one of the things that I always associate faith with. Like, oh, if I have faith that's the size of a mustard seed, I can tell a mountain to move. Now, funny thing is that when I was writing and like I was making my notes and I thought about it, I was like, oh, mustard seed. So I look up, and I've mentioned this before, I don't know the Bible like by heart. So when I'm thinking of a verse, I go to the Bible app and I search it so that I can know what book it's in and whatnot. And so I searched mustard seed, and the first one that comes up was actually Luke. And so I'm like, okay, and I write it down. But then when I read it, I'm like, wait, this is not the one. And I was reading it, and when I tell you, I'm a big searcher. I love research in the sense of I like to know more. Like I like to know details. I'm a very detail oriented person, so that makes sense that when I read a passage, I go and search. Well, what does this mean, or what is this, and what are the attributes of this, whatever. I'm probably not making much sense because I ramble a lot. But anyways, when I looked up mustard seed in the Bible app, it first came up with Luke 17, verse 5 through 6. And that one is similar to the Matthew one, but is not talking about a mountain. And it says, I'll read it here. It says, the apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. And the Lord said, if you had faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. And so I underlined mulberry tree immediately because I'm like, what's a mulberry tree? And I know for a fact, like if we know Jesus, right? This is Jesus speaking. Everything that he said was like intentional. With everything that he was talking about, he meant something. Like the parables. It was not just a parable. There was a meaning behind it. It was like something that he was trying to get you to understand, right? So when I first searched it, that it didn't give me the mountain one, and I'm like, am I crazy? Was it always mulberry tree and not mountain? But I'm like, no, I've heard mountain. Anyways, I searched mulberry tree, and it says be uprooted and planted in the sea. So immediately I'm like, what's going on with the mulberry tree roots? Like, right? Because we're talking about faith, right? And so Jesus in Matthew and in Luke, he's trying to, like, when he's speaking to them, he's trying to tell them the gravity of what their faith should be like the size of their faith, or how if they had this type of faith, they can do such miraculous things. And so you think, oh, a mountain, that's already pretty big. Like that's me telling a mountain to move from here to there. That's a big miracle, right? That's huge. And then you think a mulberry tree, and you're like, what's so special about a mulberry tree that like he's using it as an example of if you had faith, you can tell it to be uprooted. And so I searched, of course, because I'm such a detail, and I looked up and I said, what's the mulberry tree roots? Like, what's the issue? And it said they have very invasive roots. So their roots grow like everywhere, where like they're above ground. It said it that it can, like, you don't want to plant it anywhere near like pipes or anything like that, because they will break through pavements. Like their roots are strong and invasive. And so I said, okay, what else, right? Like I'm searching, and it says the roots that are close to the soil surface will get bigger, breaking sidewalks, eventually getting in the way of lawn mowing. So I'm like, man, I need to see these roots. And I looked up a picture of these roots, and I will put it on the screen so you guys can see. I mean, they are big roots. Like, they're everywhere. You ever seen those trees in front of your house that they just have like roots just outgrowing everywhere? And no matter what, like, they just continue to grow into, and then next thing you know, they're like almost popping up and they're big. And anyways, I'm getting off track. But insane, like these crazy roots. And so I like the fact that, again, he uses something to let you know, like, this is what you can do. Like, that looks impossible, right? You see those crazy roots. You see how you can literally tell that tree that has, I don't even know how many roots, to just uproot itself, which is already invasive, which is already hard, because not only are they growing above ground, then they're growing also underground. Like, that's hard enough, like, in itself. You can tell that tree to just come up, go into the sea, and it'll obey you. So again, faith, right? I was on that for a little while. I'm sorry. I do that a lot, but by now you're probably used to it. So yeah, so I'm like, okay, that's pretty that's a good demonstration of faith. Okay, of what it should be, what our faith should be like. And so that's how I defined it, right? Immediately I thought about believing in God, about the mustard seed verse, and then I started thinking about, okay, well, what does faith means? And like, if we Google it, if I Google faith, what does it mean? And it says to trust complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And then the second one was strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion. So kind of like what I said before, right? Believing in God. And now the part that got me was the strong belief in the doctrines of a religion. And I believe that's one of those faith versions or definitions that this world uses a lot. And we use it in a sense, and maybe I shouldn't say we, but I think the world uses it in a way where you don't have a relationship with God, because we understand, right? In order for us to be saved, in order for us to make it to heaven and face Jesus and face God and be like, I'm here, I made it, face judgment day and whatnot, but then for him to look at us and say, well done, good and faithful servant, there has to be a relationship. It can't just be, oh, I have faith in Christianity, I have faith in God, and I believe in the doctrines and being, loving and kind and being graceful, but then you don't have no sort of relationship with God in any way. I that for me, it's not a mustard seed kind of faith that you can tell that mountain and you'll be like, mountain move. I don't think that will happen, because again, there's not that relationship. Your faith is just not built and not growing, and it's not anyway. So I'm trying not to get sidetracked, because like I said, this one I really learned a lot. I was like, okay, what it made me question, where is my faith and how is my faith looking nowadays? And so that's what the basic definition of faith was as you Google it. So now that I gave you like a surface level, I feel, definition of faith, and like the basic, and not that the Matthew and Luke verses are basic. No, I personally think though that they are very common verses associated with faith. But there are other things in the Bible, and there are deeper things to understand about the word faith that maybe we don't obviously look at. I know for a fact I obviously did not know or think about in any way, because I didn't know it until I searched it and read it and obviously put two and two together. Now that I've given you that surface level, I want to go deeper into the faith biblically and what it means, and then go into a little bit of my experiences lately and these questions that as I was doing this research, had to ask myself, and asking the question, of how my faith is. And hopefully by the end of this, you have some questions for yourself. Hopefully by the end of this, you learn something new. We grow together. It challenges you. It pushes you to just get out of whatever it is that you're going through, and have a bolder faith, and have a stronger faith, and have a more a wiser faith. And so I used this resource that I was told about through one of the leaders in our church. And thank God for our leaders in the church, the pastoral leads, and that at least the ones that want to help you grow, that like take their time to like give you resources and help you, and they teach you different things. They want you to know these things. And I think that's so like valuable and rewarding to have those type of people in our lives and in the church. um because, well, we know the term church hurt, it's very common nowadays. And so anyways, I'm just glad that I have pastoral leads and people that I've met through the church that have gone to me, and that I've myself also, I want to give myself, props. I don't do that enough. That I was bold enough to go to the pastoral lead and say, "Listen, I want to know more of this, and how do I get a deeper understanding of the Bible and all these different things?" And so be bold, by the way, be bold. And whatever you feel like you're struggling with, like don't be afraid to ask a pastoral lead for help or for guidance, because that's what they want. They want you to know more. They want you to grow. They want you to do things like this, what I'm doing. Start a podcast, start an Instagram page, write a book, be an evangelist, whatever, and do it the right way. And in order for us to do it the right way, we have to have the right knowledge, right? Um, and I believe that the resource that I received from this pastoral lead was so helpful. And when I got into it, I was mind blown. So, anyways, um, this is gonna be one of those episodes. I'm telling you right now, it's just gonna be one of those episodes. You're just gonna have to bear with me, and we're just gonna get through it together, and we're gonna learn. So, faith. Okay, biblical faith. Now, I'm not one to be like super theological and, oh, like faith in Hebrew means this or in Greek it means this. I'm not at all. However, I see why pastors and evangelists and theologians um, use it so heavily, because there is a deeper understanding of things. And so as I was using this resource, it was telling me how faith, the word faith in Greek is pistis, pistis, which means reliance upon and trust in God, and a central emphasis of Christianity. I like though the beginning of it where it says reliance upon and trust in God. And so two words, trust and reliability. Then um it's different things that was said. It's one of the things that it gives an introduction. It says Christianity is largely characterized by its emphasis on faith and beliefs. Christians are commonly called believers, and a commitment to Christianity typically involves a confession of faith. The centrality, the centrality, wow, excuse me, of faith in Christianity reflects the biblical significance of faith. So it goes on these different things. And one of the first things that they touch on, it says, based on Paul's teachings about faith in Romans and Galatians, Martin Luther argued that Christians must understand their salvation as sola fide, which is by faith alone. And I was like, okay. And I love how it gave that detail, because even someone like Martin Luther King knew, right? This, in order for us to understand our salvation, our walk, our process in this relationship with God is by faith alone. And so it's so important. And so I'll go through this so that we don't take too much time. And so it says to have faith in God or Jesus is to be faithful to a covenantal bond, which is initiated by God. So I like that. So first of all, it starts with God. Like he has a bond with us. He makes a covenant with us. And bound according to appropriate promises and expectations on both sides. So it's basically saying, okay, he makes a promises and there are expectations from both God and me as well. Okay. That already got me. I was like, oh, I don't think about faith like that, right? Like again, I'm thinking believing in God. I'm not thinking about the expectations and the promises that come between God and I, and and faith. And so it says the command for Christians to have faith is not merely a cerebral exercise or eager wish, but a command with expectation of fidelity and trust. Listen, fidelity, being faithful, it's not just about having faith. It's about, have you been faithful? Have you committed? Have you been loyal to God in everything? Can I say that? I cannot say that I have, to be 100% honest. And so they were, I'll read one more thing. So it says New Testament authors like Paul promote a concept of faith that is opposed to the common phrase blind faith. For example, Paul affirms that Christians live by faith and not by sight. We've known that, right? That's 2 Corinthians 5:7. With this phrase, he refers to Christians' capacity for a kind of spiritual perception that allows them to interpret the world in a godly way. God's people are able to see and perceive his work in the world while the rest of the world ignores it or rejects it. That right there, it's the truth about how things are right now. The people who are able to have a relationship with God, we gain this new perception of the world. We gain this new perception of life, that we see him in everything. And I was just having a conversation with my friend the other day, and I was reading a small book about, I actually have it right here. And I honestly did not intentionally put this book right here for the purpose of the podcast, but it was here, so it worked out perfect. It's the Prayer of Jabez. And so I was reading it. And anyways, there was a part that I was reading, and in that moment, prior to reading this passage, let me say this, prior to reading the passage, I mentioned to him, and I was like, this is something that I feel like I'm struggling with, and I don't know why, but I need to be better in this, and I need to just get myself, straight in this area. And then as soon as I stopped talking and I was like, okay, I'm going to continue to read this, I read it, and exactly what I had just mentioned to him, like not even a minute before, was addressed in the book, in the chapter that I was in where I had left off. And I immediately was like, man, God is always talking. I stopped and I was like, he's always speaking. And I'm like, these are the moments that I wish people knew, that when God speaks, it may not be an audible voice, but he speaks, like he shows up. And I think that's, again, a spiritual perception that we gain when we have this faith with God, right? That it's not about what we see, but it's about our faith, our spiritual, and our relationship with him. And so when that was brought up, I love that. And again, I'm learning this as I'm reading. I'm using this resource and I'm reading, and I'm like, wow, that's so true. And again, I'm looking at it as a wow factor, because when I had to ask myself the question of how do I define faith, it wasn't by this. It wasn't by this deepness of it. And so I love that. And I like that there were different words that they were used that were also Hebrew words. And faith means trust or reliability, which we talked about. It also means to remain stable amid the unsettling, it means to remain stable amid the unsettling circumstances of life, realizing God's truth, that he has established them. So that alone for me was convicting, because I cannot say 100% that I have remained stable in every single circumstance of my life. I haven't. The reason why I said just a few moments ago that I'm not well and that I'm not in the greatest place, in the best place, is because of my life circumstances. And I've definitely have dwelled in that, and I have remained in that negative space rather than just being faithful and remaining stable. So the fact that that word came up and that was a different definition of faith too was convicting to me. And then it says loyalty and commitment and truth. And so there are different things that are being described or are defining faith. And I think if we all truly remember this in every single thing that we are involved in every action, in every relationship, in every project, in our work, in our jobs, if we look at faith like more than just the word faith, more than just the verse that talks about verse of a mustard seed, more than believing in God, excuse me, um, we would really, really grow and have breakthroughs and have a difference in how we walk in our faith. And so I wanted to also um share that right now, and I'm drawing a blank because it's hard to kind of express it. When we Let me say this, when I face a hard circumstance, when I'm facing something that just seems too heavy, immediately I start figuring out, what can I do? How do I fix this? Where do I go from here? And that's leaning on my own understanding. That's immediately trying to take matters into my own hands. And we cannot do that. We cannot do that because we get in the way of what God is trying to do, of what He's trying to fix. And that's also a way of not having that faith in him, not having a faith in his promises. And he says that covenant that he made with us since the very beginning. And it's also taken away the expectation, right? So it said that there's an expectations on both sides, from him and then from me as well. And his expectation, I believe, is that we believe in him and we trust in him so much that we let go of all control. We let go of everything that we're going through. And we're like, you know what, God, you got it. You do this. You're going to fix it. You're going to make it better. You do this. That's his expectation. And I think our expectation in return of that is that because we trust in him, so um we trust in him, that in the end what we receive is, growth and maturity, spiritual maturity and breakthroughs and deliverance and, success in whatever it is that we're looking for. And so it's hard and I draw a blank because doing this research was very convicting to me, because I cannot say that my faith has been the faith that it needs to be, honestly, especially with where I've come from, right? The the way that he has saved me and redeemed me and has used me through the podcast, through the business. He has actively used me. He has actively spoken to me and told me, I have plans for you. I'm going to use you. And even with that, I get unstable when my life circumstances come up. And so again, I draw blanks, and I feel like I've been getting a little sidetracked because this one was hard for me. And not only that, but because prior to doing this, I once again didn't have anything planned, did not have, all these notes already ready. I didn't. I've just been in that funk, and it's hard because you want to get out of that. You want to get out of whatever it is that you're going through. You want to get out of that mentality of negative and heaviness and burden and doubt. You want to get out of that. And I believe that the way to get out of that is by your faith and by growing in your faith. And I can't say that I have. I can say that my faith is there for sure, but it needs to grow. It needs to mature. It needs to reach a different level. It needs to be stable. It needs to be loyal. It needs to be trusting and relying on God, solely on God and not myself. And understanding that God's truth, he established it, is his truth, which means, I mean, what kind of truth is that? The best truth you can ever have. Like, even when we tell truths, is not to the level of God's truth, if that makes sense. And so I hope um that as I'm saying all these different things, this is challenging you and making you ask yourself the question of what does your faith look like? Is your faith as strong as you believe it is? And have you walked in trust? Have you been reliant on him? Have you remained stable? Have you been loyal? Have you committed to him? I think those are hard questions that to face, truly. So I hope that that alone in the beginning has challenged you in somewhat. Like I said, this episode for me, it's about challenging you, stepping on your toes, because it's what I needed. I needed the reality check. I needed the awakening. I needed to just be shaken up and been like, you know why you've been in this funk? You know why you continue to fall back into the same pattern? Your faith needs to grow. You need to just believe in God and believe in him and absolutely everything. So let's move on. Let's move on. So, um, one of the things that I loved about the resource that I was using is that it gives you like all the different words, right? Like I was telling you, all the different words about what faith means. And so I'm going to go over a few passages and why I love that. As we read this passage, now I get a completely different perspective of it, like a different understanding of it. And one of the first Bible references that came to mind, and I'll tell you this, when I thought about what I'm going to talk about, I was like, I don't know what to do. God, help me again, because I'm always going to want to lean on him when it comes to this. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to open up my Bible. And the first passage that came up was Hebrews. And it was actually Hebrews. I'll tell you right now, it was Hebrews 11. And Hebrew 11:1. It's a very popular verse as well that we hear very often. It's that now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And that's a very popular verse. And I've definitely heard it. And I don't know why I didn't associate that one when I was thinking about how I define faith. But God knows why he did this, why he wanted me to talk about it that way. Only he knows. So that was the passage that like I opened up my Bible, and Hebrews has been like on my mind recently, to be 100% honest. And I feel like God is wanting me to read this book. And so obviously today when it opened up and I'm in Hebrews, I was like, okay, this is what I got to talk about. And it was right there. It said by faith. And I was like, okay, we're gonna get into it. So of course, as I'm in Hebrews, I'm like, well, I don't just want to talk about one verse. I want to just find out more. I want the deep stuff about faith. And so I went to chapter 10. And so in chapter 10, and I'm going to read it to you in different versions, in different verses. I'm going to read it to you in different versions or translations. There we go. I'm going to read it to you in different translations, because we all know different translations include different words. And that is why those different words, as I used my resource, was able to give me all these different meanings. And that's why I felt like I got such a deeper understanding of the word faith. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. So Hebrews 10, chapter 10, Oh my gosh, I just said that. Hebrews 10, verses 19 through 23. And I'm going to read those in ESV, English Standard Version. And it says, therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is through his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. I love that. I honestly think that what this is saying is we need to understand that we were given this amazing, I say opportunity, but I think it's even more. It's just like it's again, we now are able to have access to heaven. We have access to the Holy Spirit. We have access to this new world, this light world, this illumination of life because of what Christ did for us through his flesh. And because of that, our faith, our heart should be full with that assurance of faith, because this is what we gain. Like, we know we have victory. We know what we have access to at the end of the day. So I love that. And then it's saying, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. So once again, it's saying remain stable. And for he who promised is faithful. So again, is he establishes those promises and he is faithful. And I was just like, okay, once again, that full assurance of faith, I got it. I understand it. Then there's that second part. And this second part, I want to read it. And it's not necessarily saying, it's not using the word faith, but the reason why I want to read it is because I want to emphasize why I believe that this episode, it's not about making you feel good. It's not about just doing a podcast and recording because I'm here and I'm a podcaster. No. This is for the glory of God. This is for him. And if it's for him, then I need to do it the right way. And if I need to do it the right way, then I need to challenge you. And I need to put you in a position where maybe it's going to rub you off the wrong way. Maybe it's going to step on your toes. And I cannot hold back. And I need to be a threat to the enemy. And I need to be bold in what I am doing. And I need to do that because I love you. I need to do that because I care for you. And because I want you to grow like I want to grow. As I said it, we're going to grow together in this. And this second part, as the verse continues, I think it's what it's saying. Obviously, it's touching in a different way too, but I think it's also saying that. And so this is still chapter 10, verse 24. And I'm going to read it in ESV. So it says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. This right here, what it's saying is share, tell it, meet together, encourage one another. You see that God is coming soon. We see it. We talk about it all the time. And to some people, it's like, oh, we say that, but we don't know what soon is. Yeah, true. We don't know what soon is. We don't know if that's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. We don't know. But what we do know is he's near. And if he is near, we need to wake up. If he is near, we need to make changes. If he is near, we need to just stop slacking. We need to grow our faith. We need to grow our relationship with him. We need to be better. We need to encourage people. We need to challenge people. We need to be bold. We need to speak up. We need to preach. We need to pray. Like, we need to do the work. We need to do this for him, for his kingdom. And that also goes into faith. Faith without works is dead. And it touches touches that when I was doing the resources, and it kind of goes into what that verse truly means. But I think even that alone is telling you, you have to do something. And I know it was talking about doing deeds for others, like if someone is hungry, feeding them. But I think it's also more about that. I think this deed, me right now doing this, even if it's just 5 listeners, even if it's just one listener, doing that for that one listener is a faith that is full and that God will honor and wants. Because I need to challenge you. I need to make you question, what is my faith like? What is my walk like? How is my relationship with God? So I love that. I love that it talks about that. And then immediately afterward, it says, let's encourage one another, because that's what faith is about also. And so I love that. So let's continue. So we're going to now read chapter 10, but we're going to read verses 32 through 36. And I'm going to read it in NLT. And the reason why I'm reading it in NLT, not that I have to give you the reason, but I'm going to, is because it doesn't use the words that I want to emphasize and really get you to understand in ESV. It uses different words, and I think the NLT is perfect for that. So we're still in chapter 10 in Hebrews, verse 32 through 36. Here we go. So it says, think back on those early days when you first learned about Christ. Remember how you remained faithful, even though it meant terrible suffering. Sometimes you were exposed to public ridicule and were beaten, and sometimes you helped others who were suffering the same things. You suffered along with those who were thrown into jail, and when all you owned was taken from you, you accepted it with joy. You knew there were better things waiting for you that will last forever. So do not throw away this confident trust in the Lord. Remember the great reward it brings you. Patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that He has promised. Honestly, this is probably going to become one of my favorite verses. Well, it's multiple verses, but I think for sure it's going to become one of my favorites. And I'm going to go back to it and read it when I just need that rude awakening and slap in the face. Not physically, but spiritually. You know what I'm talking about. Because first thing it says, think back on those early days when you first learned about Christ. I can think back to that. And I think when I think back to that, and I truly believe that that's when I came back to God, because my knowledge of Him before, nope, absolutely not. I didn't know. I knew that He died for us, and I knew that He forgives our sins, and I knew that He loves us. But having a relationship with Him, an intimate relationship with Him, I know Him. I know Him now. I know who He is. And it says, remember how you remained faithful, even though it meant terrible suffering. Yeah, I remember that also. Absolutely. Because when I first came to Christ, it immediately meant everything that I was involved in, that lifestyle, needed to go. People in my life, friendships that were no longer benefiting me or helping me in my spiritual walk, needed to go. Certain habits, drinking, smoking, needed to go. Music needed to go. That's hard. Okay? And relationships, that can be a suffering, because who knows if you just came back to God and you've been in this 10-year relationship, and then God is like, He's not the one for you. But you got to remain faithful in that. Then it says, sometimes you were exposed to public ridicule and were beaten, and sometimes you helped others who were suffering the same things. So right here, a bunch of things to unpack. You were ridiculed. We know this. I think it's so common that I think it's sad. Let me just say this. I want to say this because I again, this episode for me, I'm on fire. I'm ready. I think it's sad that we live in a world that we get more likes for following trends and talking about the most absurd things It's how you get more follows and more likes. Then when I immediately put my story and I talk about Jesus and I talk about my faith, and people are like, oh, look at her now. She's all faith, she's all godly when she was just in the streets, twerking up and down. Yeah, I said it, twerking up and down, whatever. Oh, she was smoking, she was drinking, whatever. Like, you were literally just, people can't help it. And you were ridiculed, but you didn't care. Why didn't you care? Because no matter what, you were getting attention. You were like, I'm still going to put my faith out here. I'm still going to talk about God. I'm going to talk about this change. I don't care if people make fun of me because I'm doing this for the right reasons. And that's like your faith, that initial faith, that like big faith that you're just like, man, I don't care, man. I don't care if I'm getting beaten. I don't care if I'm being ridiculed. And it helps, as it says, you helped others who were suffering the same things. So even though I may not have like deliberately been talking to someone and helping them at the beginning of I was doing it, but me posting it, me putting myself out there, just yesterday, it could have been, let's say, just yesterday I was hanging out with some friends, and this is just an example. Just yesterday I was hanging out with some friends and I was getting drunk and I was doing all this stupidity and all this dumb stuff. And then the next day I immediately talk about how God met me in my drunkenness and he just helped me to realize that I'm better than this and da 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 da. And some people will ridicule me and some people will be like, what? And some of those friends that I might have hang out with that night before might see my story and been like, what is she talking about? But then that one friend that may be going through something, that may feel the exact same way that you were feeling in that moment or that same night, that didn't express it, but you being so boldly in your faith shared it and said, this is what I'm going through. I was just drunk yesterday, but God showed me how he loves me. He showed me my worth. And you putting that out there helped that person. That's faith. Are you doing that? We're going to continue. So it says, you suffered along with those who were thrown in jail, into jail. And when all you owned was taken from you, you accepted it with joy. So again, what I was talking about before, all these things that you lost, you were like, they need to go. You were like, I don't want it, because you knew what you were gaining in return. The relationship with God, the promises that he has for you were way better. So you're just like, here you go, God. I don't need it. You were like, that's fine, with joy. That's faith. That's faith. And I think that sometimes along the line, we lose that kind of faith because we hold on to certain things. And hold on to certain things. It can be relationships. It can be jobs. It can be habits that we feel are okay for certain times because we're like, well, maybe if I only do it sometimes, it's okay. We almost like go slowly back into old habits and old patterns. And because we don't do them so much, or because we don't do it to the extremity as we did it before, we believe that it's okay. No. We cannot do that. We cannot do that. Okay. So you knew there were better things waiting for you that will last forever. Again, eternity, forever. His promises, his truth, he established it. And what he establishes for us is what? Eternal life. What he tells us is when a promise that he gives us, it stands no matter what. And we know this from the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis and in Exodus, and how he promises Abraham, and through Abraham the promise still goes through Jacob, and through Jacob it still goes through Joseph, and through Joseph it still goes through Moses. And we know this, his promises stands, okay, forever. So do not throw away this confident trust in the Lord. Remember the great reward it brings you. Okay. Patient endurance, which wait till I touch on this, okay, is what you need now so that you will continue to do God's will. That part is for me. I receive it, I take it, and I need it, and I need to just ponder on that, because when I tell you that doing this, doing the podcast, doing this is not easy. And just because he's like, Anna, I'm going to use you and I have plans for you, does not mean in any way that I have that patient endurance that just stands and waits and waits and waits. And it's just like, I need to just be in this waiting season and he's going to make it happen and it's going to grow and I'm going to be better. Oh my gosh. I have not been patient endurant. I haven't. Okay. But it's telling you, you need that in order to do God's will. And I know this is God's will for my life. I know it without a shadow of a doubt. This is what he wants me to do because of exactly every time I say it in the episode, every time I think about how I was just struggling yesterday and I was struggling in a way that just felt like I was away from him, like I couldn't feel his presence, but yet I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you and I'm being honest and I'm being transparent and I'm being bold. It's how I know this is God's will for me because he doesn't use those that are like big. He doesn't like, I feel like when you look at different stories, God is using those that are like the underdogs. He literally wants the underdogs. His disciples, they made, not made fun of, but they criticized Jesus because they were like, he hangs out with tax collectors and drunkards and whatever. Like the people that he uses for his purpose and his will are the least people that you expect. And I believe that for me, from where I'm at and what I'm going through and my season and how I am, I'm an underdog, but yet he wants me to do this. This is his will. So I need to be patient and I need to endure. And then I will receive all that he has promised. And you would think that by that alone, I would be like, man, my faith is going to be strong. I got this. No. And that's just the sad truth that we don't get to that place all the time where we just believe, that we just stand on his word, that we're grounded in it and being like, God, you know what? No matter what life throws at me, no matter what I'm going through, I trust in your word. You said you're going to give me this. You promised it and it's going to be forever. I'm going to stand on that. Nah, we don't. Let's be real. We don't. So let's keep going. This episode's going to be a long one, but I love it. I don't care. Okay. So the next thing that I said I was going to touch on was the patient endurance. I said, I want to touch on that. Why do I want to touch on that? Right after Hebrews is a chapter called James. And if you know the book of James, one of the first things on his chapter that he touches on is faith and endurance. So I like that resource that I was using before, right? That gave me all those different types of definitions for the word faith. I was like, well, I want to go into it again. And now I want to not just use it for the Hebrews, but I want to use it for the James portion of it too. So let's go see what it says. So in the Hebrews chapter, right? In chapter 11, because verse 1, we talked about how faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And the word faith in that verse, so many different words, is persuasion, conviction, religious, reliance, constancy, truth, assurance, belief, faith, fidelity. Some of those things we touched on. Right? And so we're like, okay, that's what I need to have. This is the type of faith I need to be, believing. I need to be convicted in this. I need to believe. I need to be faithful. I need to be committed. I know this, right? And then the James, when it talks about the faith, and I want to read it to you in NLT, but I'm also going to read it to you in ESV. Okay, so I'll just read it to you in both. Let's keep going. Okay, so James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. And I'm like, oh, let me find it. And it's literally right afterwards. Okay, so an ESV, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I feel like we're just doing like a Bible study episode all together. I love it. Okay, so James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. So it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Okay, that was ESV. Now let's read it in NLT. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." So in ESV, it says steadfastness, and in NLT, it uses endurance. So endurance is a word alone that it's hard to bear, because we know that endurance means we're going to go through an unpleasant or a difficult process. We know that. So James is immediately telling you, count it joy. When you go through these trials, count it joy. And when you do that, your faith is going to grow. Your faith is going to build steadfastness. It's going to build endurance. And then you'll be perfect. You'll lack nothing. Very easy, James. Easier said than done. So I want to tell you how I love, and this is why I think it's so cool. The Bible just ties all in together, and that there are resources that like connect the dots for us. Because let's be honest, the Bible, it's a big book. It's a really big book. And to connect the dots, we have to read the entirety of it, and then being like going back and be like, oh, that ties into that. So when you have a resource that just kind of gives it to you all in one, I love it. And so in the resources that I used again, in James 1, it's saying that steadfastness means endurance, and it means constancy again. So again, faith meant constancy. Steadfastness means constancy. Then it says enduring, patience. I lost my mind when I read that one, I'm telling you right now. And then it says patient continuance, which means waiting. Again, I lost my mind when I read that. How many of us can say we have really good patience? I can't say that. If anything, if you're close to me, you know I have very little, almost nil patience. God is still working on me. He's working on all of us, okay? I'll produce it little by little. So when that word came up, I was like, oh, okay. Because when you read it, right? If we read it again and it says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces patience. You know, when you you know, when you're going to go pray, or like you're telling someone you're going through something and you're like, oh, God, give me patience. And they're like, don't ask for that. Because when you ask for patience, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for a certain trial that's going to help you build patience. Let's get out of that mentality, shall we? Let's pray for patience. Let's face trials and being like, I need this. I needed this. What I went through, I needed it. It's going to help me grow. Not only spiritually, but physically. Like my maturity, my wisdom will grow, will enlarge. I mean, let's get out of this whole let's not pray for patience, okay? And then it says patient continuance, waiting. How long have you been waiting? Whatever it is that you've been waiting for, how long have you been waiting for it? And what are you waiting for? What is your patience level? How long do you feel like you've been patient for? Those are questions that I think we need to ask ourselves. And if I know for myself, I haven't been patient with God. Because if I was patient with God, I would not be so desperate and I would not be so unstable when I'm faced with even the slightest, smallest inconvenience. I immediately lose it. I'm like, why am I going through this? Why? Oh my gosh, this is not working out. Oh my God, the business is not growing. Oh my gosh, the podcast. I don't know what to talk about. No, nobody's really like rating it. No one's sharing it. No one is this. Like, these are honest things that I think about, guys. These are things that I legit think about and go through. And when I tell you that it's been hard, it's been hard. But I haven't been patient with God. I haven't been patient in the waiting with God. And that's hard. And that is why I think it's so important for us to ask ourselves the question, are we really walking by faith? Are we really having a faith that is firm, is strong, is committed, is loyal, is reliant on Him, trust is Him, it's stable. It's not just believing in God and not just being like, I trust that God will give me the job that I want. It's that in every day that you are waiting, and every day that you don't receive a paycheck, every day that your bill is a little bit closer to past due, every day that you whatever it may be, you stand in that and you say, it's okay. Because clearly I'm gonna build endurance through this. My endurance is gonna build me my faith and it's gonna give me steadfastness. And in that, I'm gonna be perfect and I lack nothing. I lack nothing. I'm complete. And that will be forever because His promise stands. So I don't know how long this episode has been. I think it's been like an hour and a half. I don't even know. It's probably been longer than that. Listen, this is the episode that I probably think I want you to share it with your family, with your friends. This is the one episode I think is the first time I'm asking this. Rate it, share it, give me your feedback, post it, because our faith needs to grow. This world that we're living in is hard. And then on top of that, we have our life circumstances that are harder. But we need to remain faithful. We need to have faith. We need to have steadfastness. We need to remain in God and trust in Him and ask ourselves the questions, right? If faith means all these different words, if faith means trust, have I fully trusted Him? If faith means reliability, have I been solely reliant on God? That means I'm not leaning on my own understanding. Okay. If it means to remain stable, have I remained stable in every circumstance of my life? If it means to be committed, have I been fully committed to God? If it means that we are loyal, that it's His truth, and that we understand that He has established them, have I truly walked in that truth? Have I spoken truth about my circumstances? Because your circumstances say you don't have a job. But what's the real truth? No, you have a job. It's just not there yet. Your circumstances say right now I'm going through a divorce and I know that this divorce needed to happen because it was unhealthy or it was manipulative, whatever it may be. And your circumstance says, now you're going to be single again. Your marriage, fell apart. But what's the truth? What's the truth behind that? Because it's hard to kind of understand the truth behind that. The truth is, and you speak the truth in your circumstance. Yes, you're going through this divorce. Yes, you're going through this. And I'm using divorce because I think I feel like that's for somebody. That somebody needed to hear that. And that's such a hard thing to go through. And so when you're going through that, it's easy to just remain in thinking about that truth, and that you're going through that you're going through that separation, that you're going through this breakup, this disruption in your life. And it's easy to think about that and walk in that truth. But the truth really is, God has something better for you. He took you out of that because he wants you and him intimately. He is a jealous God. He is a protective God, and he needs your undivided attention. That's the truth. And the truth is that because of that, he's going to take you to a new level. He's going to strengthen you. He's going to strengthen you. He's going to redeem you. He's going to restore you. He's going to give you your identity back. That's the truth. Have you truly walked in that truth? And if you haven't, you need to ask yourself the question, do I really have a strong faith? So I think I've touched on this enough, and I'm pretty sure this episode is going on over an hour. But I pray that whoever needed to hear this is hearing it, and it's listening to the words, and it's understanding every word, and that you ask yourself those hard questions, and you face yourself, and you give yourself a reality check, and believe in God more, and trusting him more. And that means if you're going through depression, stop speaking that you have depression. Speak life into yourself. If your job is hard right now and you feel like everybody at your job is against you, speak truth into that. That means there's a new blessing on the side of that. And again, because of that, you're going to build endurance. Whatever it may be, whatever you're going through, stop believing the truth of the certain circumstance that you're in, that you're facing right now. Stop believing that truth and believe in his truth. Believe in his promises, the ones that stand, the one that he established originally, because he knew you before he formed you. And before he formed you, he knew the plans that he had for you from the beginning. And those plans don't change. Those plans stand. So start believing in that truth. Start speaking in that truth. Start living in that truth. And then you can say, okay, I live by faith. So I hope this helped you. I know it helped me. I hope this challenges you, because I know it challenged me. God loves you. I love you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the way that you have just followed along this entire process. And thank you if you stayed for this entire episode. I appreciate you and love you even more for that. And I'm going to start doing this because I haven't, but I need to. If you haven't, please share. Please subscribe. Please comment. Please rate the show, because I truly want this to be for God's glory. I want it to reach lives. I want it to reach hundreds. And God willing, for God's glory, you know what? No, God willing, no, it will. Okay, because this is his will for me, and his plans for me are always greater, that this will reach thousands and however many more. But it starts with us. It starts with you. It starts with passing on the word and supporting one another and encouraging one another. And so I ask that you please help me to support the podcast, to share it with others, to give me your feedback. If you want to come on here and talk, reach out to me. I want people to come on here and talk and share their testimonies and share their stories, because we all have so much that we can share with so many other people that will save and will encourage and will ultimately bring a light into someone's darkness. So if you have a testimony, if you want to come on here and talk, let's do it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your constant support and your prayers and just everything in both the podcast and the nails business. And I cannot wait to see what else comes with this. And so I hope that this is good for you. I have nothing more to say. I am all talked out. So God loves you. I love you. Stay blessed.